Welcome to 30 Minutes of Wisdom, Rising in Consciousness and Mindfulness. It has been a few weeks that we haven't gotten together. There is a lot going on, but we are back
We're
and
back.
we're back with the best. The best. And I actually, one of the reasons why I'm so excited, I was so looking forward to the show today. I'm here with Lynn Min. And Lynn is my co-host for the show. She's a psychotherapy CEO in Soul Matters. And we're here to introduce you to the amazing Dr. Jeff McNairy. He is the Chief Medical Officer at Rhythmia in Costa Rica. Dr. Jeff,
Woohoo!
welcome.
Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Yes.
Great,
Pura
great,
vida.
great. Pura vida. I love
Yeah.
that. Pura vida. All right. So today we're going to talk about a topic that Lynn brought up. And she actually said, why don't we talk about what we focus on expands? And that topic immediately resonated. So, Lynn, before I even hand the time over to Dr. Jeff, why was this topic on your mind?
I'm gonna try to read back to like the text I sent you. So I've just been feeling that a lot of people, including me, are stuck on whether it's a conscious or unconscious cycle. We want things or we go after things in a conscious way that's good and for us, but unconsciously we're stuck and we're constantly focused on what if this happens, what if that happens, or that bad thing that happened in the past. And then we live from that space of like, that other thing, that negative thing. And so that other energy, that negative energy that we're focusing on is what we're creating our next moments with. And so I'm like, I want to be rich, but I'm coming from a space where I feel poor. And now I'm like a millionaire, but I still feel poor. And I'm still living like the same life I've lived when I was poor. Like, how did I do that? Or maybe it's happening in people's relationships, but, or when you're thinking like, oh, my boss hates me. And lo and behold, your boss probably does, at that point. So things like that. And so I wanted to kind of unpack like the science behind it, but also bring in the spiritual elements of how energy begets energy and how we are also so much creating our next moments, whether we know it or not, through what we focus on and what we believe and what we hold in our psyches and our fields now. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Linda. Very well said. So, Dr. Jeff, why don't we start then by discussing on this topic? I know there is a lot of people that have talked about this and there are a lot of articles about it, but I was really looking forward to hearing your perspective. Let's first uh, decode this. What we focus on expands.
Well, I like to use a phrase. It's really simple. It's just I am, and that means intention plus attention equals manifestation. And I learned that from a really good, wise friend of mine who said she told me, hey, whatever your intention is, you're giving attention to it with your behavior and your thoughts and your all kinds of stuff, and then that's creating a reality for you. Like for me, I operate a facility that is non-traditional for healing in Costa Rica, and it's controversial in a lot of ways, but it's getting amazing results. But at the beginning, I've been doing it for almost 7 years, and so at the beginning of this project, I was really thinking that the pharmaceutical industry or certain government entities or other big businesses would be coming after me and be trying to kind of shut me down and coming at me critiquing. It never happened, knock on wood. But that was kind of what I was focusing on. That was the attention I was giving my life at that time. And so what was happening is I was operating and I was manifesting from a place of fear, and I was always sort of holding back the true me and the true knowledge that I had to kind of walk on eggshells, and it was holding me back. It was holding the facility back. It was holding the patients back. So I learned that, you know what, my intention is to help people get the healing they need from trauma, addiction, anxiety, depression. So because of that, I'm going to focus on how do we do that the best possible way. And because of that, our numbers have gone through not just because of my intention, right, but because of the whole operations sort of fluidity within itself. Lots of great results have happened. So I learned a really great lesson. So It's just a simple thing. I am, right? I am. Intention plus attention equals manifestation. So that's something that's just like a simple thing we can all remember, you know?
That's
Oh,
awesome.
beautiful. Lynn, I want to ask him one more question. I know that you have something in mind. How do you make that shift, though? I know that you are a very self-aware human being, and you know that you needed to make that shift, that that you needed to focus on your intentions. But how do you mentally make that effort to shift your attention?
Is that a question to Dr. Jeff?
So, Dr. Jeff, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant to Lynn. My bad. So I have an answer.
Okay.
This is how you do it. If you're not mindful, and if you're not taking time for yourself to really think and connect and regroup, you're not going to be able to have the moments of where you can shift into this new awareness. Now, we all know in the corporate world, everybody's moving super fast paced. It's just the way it is. It's the reality. It's not going to change anytime soon, I don't think. But what can change is your own behavior within that system. So having little moments of self-connection are very important. I lived in New York for a while. I know Lynn is in New York. And so what happens with this, for example, in New York, it's like this anywhere in the world in a way, but we're all busy running. And I used to be on the subway, the 6 train, and I would just like try to sit there and just think for a moment before I got to work. And, it's easy not to do that. It's easy to just kind of my next step and my next step and my next step. And, in New York, as an example, caters to that sort of thinking, like next, right? I mean, I remember I used to get off the train and all the people that I would see along the way knew me, handed me my paper, handed me my coffee. And, it's conducive to that. So you have to stop, take 5 minutes for yourself. And that's where these moments come in, where you can shift the focus away from intentions that you don't want and focusing more on intentions that you need. It's about being mindful, and mindfulness is a very important concept.
It's in the pause, it's in the silence, then the shift and the transformation begins to happen.
Now, if I don't allow myself to have these moments, it's likely because, number one, let's say I'm just not aware that it's important. But number two, I might be running from myself, and I might not be comfortable sitting with myself, because when I sit with myself, a lot of feelings come up for myself. And that could be a range of things, like maybe I don't like the career I'm in. Maybe I don't like myself. Maybe I'm upset about things that I do or how I am as a person. So it's about getting also some healing and some clarity and some self-awareness and connection. That's very important. And then so people might say, well, I don't want to sit with myself for 5 minutes. Yeah, well, that means you got some work to do ahead of that.
Very, very good.
So good. But I think this is why, like, if people are okay with pain management, they're never going to come for healing, right? Part of the busyness is how we manage the pain of what might surface up. And so if it functions for you, like I've learned to kind of, accept or kind of just like acknowledge that people will take their own time schedules on this, right? Including me. Like I used to get really frustrated because I can see how people are like running or not facing their stuff. And I would like, especially with my loved ones, right? Like, what did you just say? But it never works. It never works. They have to come to a space. You have to come to a space where you can acknowledge, oh, my old ways have not been working. Right? I need something different. And I think that's when like the real healing happens, when you decide like the old stuff isn't working anymore. Yeah.
That's right. And I think something that's important to remember for people is that instinctively as humans, we are programmed to survive and succeed. And so we often get told by the system or just our own kind of subconscious processes that, if I don't act a certain way, then I'm going to be a failure. But that's not true. An external source of shifting is what I'm talking about. Internal source.
That's right.
If I listen to a million different corporate opinions, none of them might resonate with me, so I have to really get to know myself and trust myself and know that my judgment is good for myself, because everything that we deal with in the world, it seems like these days, tells us that we don't know what's right for us, so
That's right.
I like to change, with the people I work with. I like to try to change that mindset and empower them to realize, like, no, you're a person that's a survivor and very capable and will be able to make the right decisions, so it's about just kind of owning and accepting that as a human.
And Dr. Jeff, how do we get to own and accept this as a human? So what is the process? Like someone, I mean, like me, I am consciously doing the work. I meditate every day, and I practice on healing modalities that have been very important in healing in my life. But there are moments that I feel that in certain aspects of my life that I'm not getting the results that I want. So obviously, that part aspect of my life, there is evidence in the results that I'm not getting the results that I want, either love life or whatever that is. But there is a lot going well. So I have a lot to be thankful for. But how do you sit with yourself and understand what needs to happen? What is that shift that needs to happen?
I'm guessing, and I'll make an assumption for you, that before you had this time in your life now, where you do know that you have a lot of great things going on, but there's moments where you might struggle. I'm guessing that maybe, let's say, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago or whatever, you weren't in this space, right? You were not aware per se of all these things. So you almost had to reach a point where you were possibly not happy, and your life was not where you wanted it to be, and you felt, it's like we say in the psychology and spirituality, like a dark night of the soul, right? It's like you realize that what you were doing and the path you were on was not for you. It might be for other people, and that's cool, but it wasn't what was resonating with you. You're trying to fit yourself into a category or a lifestyle that wasn't resonating. And so because you reached that point, again, I'm making a lot of assumptions, I apologize. So
good assumptions.
yeah. and what happened was you hit a wall, in a sense, with yourself, and you said, you know what, I got to change something. And you did. And you had the courage to make those shifts, to have that self-awareness, to look at yourself in the mirror and say, this is who I am. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's perfect. So now I can change. And then and it was not easy. And it took a lot of energy, and it took a lot of tears and a lot of rage. I'm assuming. And and so then once you got past that and you felt a different vibe and you felt empowered and you felt happier and you saw a light at the end of the tunnel, you followed it. And then now you're at the space where it's super healthy, and there's things that pop up for you all the time here and there, but you can deal with it because you have a positive momentum behind you that you've created for yourself. So I think it's a matter of, I don't like to say to people, like, necessarily, oh, well, you're totally unaware of yourself, so you're going to have to just like go through hell to get to a place where you'll be fine. That's intimidating. It scares people. But there is a point where I think in life that we need to remerge and connect with ourselves. And sometimes for people, that's really hard, and they'd rather not do it. And that's okay. I mean, it's up to them. It's their own personal choice. But if I want to live happy and have things, actually, my life is actually pretty simple, believe it or not. And it seems like it wouldn't be, but it is. My life is very simple because I keep it that way. I keep it simple. And that's what brings fulfillment for me. So I think it's a matter of going through that own process individually of each person that can be really rough at times.
I love when Dr. Jeff said that we have to also celebrate or acknowledge that we have gone through the process in the past, that we have healed so much already, that understand that we know how to do this. But right now, life is not perfect, and for the most part, I think life is beautiful. And when these new things and new challenges come into our lives, we gotta trust ourselves that we know how to do this now. We know how to navigate the dark moments of the soul, and we know how to find healing. We know how to move forward.
That's right.
Yep. Amen to that.
Yeah. I think there's also this like resistance. I think an old professor of mine coined it educational resistance. And it's like when you learn something, you're like, oh wait, what you focus on expands, so then I can only focus on the good things. And then it's like you turn it into like a shame, like, why am I focusing on the negative things? Why am I not there yet? What have I been focusing on that resulted in this? And that actually also in its own like surfaces up another like anxiety, right, that we run with.
Oh yeah,
like,
well, that's an anxiety issue for sure. I mean,
that
that's an
yeah,
obsessive compulsive
yes,
response. Yes, is the
yes,
anxiety. Yeah.
yes. And so at each and every moment, I think who we are at that moment and where we are at the evolution towards like the fullness versions of us is constantly being surfaced up, right? And so it's actually necessary for us to like, not all like negative things that we focus on are all like crap and we shouldn't do it. Like actually, like we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't focus on some of the dangers and some of the things that some of it is very legitimate, right? But I think we all do this thing like, oh, we learn something and then we go, why didn't we do that? Or like, now what can we do? And then I think to your word, to both of your wisdoms, it's kind of like, at every moment, I'm just going to be this new creation that I never was in the other moments before. And it's exactly where I need to be. Like the things that are coming up to my awareness to change now needed to be now. And like it couldn't have been in the past, and to just appreciate that, and I think in that sense, we're all like just kind of walking this timeline as eternal beings who are actually outside of time.
Yes.
But it also reminds me of like somebody was talking about contra manifestations, and she was like, when you want something and you want to manifest something, but you manifest a complete opposite of that, or like something isn't happening and you're good with everything else, but like this one area you're not manifesting. And she said really kind of plainly, like, go back to your beliefs. There's something in your beliefs, whether you're conscious of it or not, that tells you, your whole system, like actually what we want would be bad, or it's not doable, or it's too much risk, or there's something in your belief systems that is like preventing you from actually getting it. And I find that to be absolutely true. Like when I'm like, oh, I want to be, I want to have this much amount of money in my bank account. And it never happened until one day I was working through a money mindset thing. And I realized, as she was going through all the blocks, one of my beliefs was, if I have money, my mom's going to take it. My mom's going to need it. And it's hard for me to say no to my mom. So I'd rather not have it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm rich, how would I be in this family as a good daughter if I hold for myself when my family has none? So I realized that's a huge block for me to build wealth. And so when money comes in, it always found a way to go out. And I would never be able to hold. And I realized, oh my goodness, I got to get rid of this block. And I'm still working through that. What does it feel like to belong and be a part of this family when I'm trying to vibrate in a very different way? Right. But that's my example.
I have a very strange example, if you want to hear it.
Yes, I want to hear it.
I love your example. That's awesome. So what I want to explain is that it even goes down to the cellular level.
Yes.
That sort of situation. Now, an example that I learned when I was at UCLA studying biochemistry a long time ago, another lifetime ago, there's a concept called an enantiomer. What that is, it's a mirror image of you have a molecule of interest, and then in natural occurring substances, there's a mirror image of that exact same substance that is an inactive form, or in some cases, it is a detrimental form of the molecule of interest. The example that I can give is thalidomide, which thalidomide in the 70s and even in the 60s, I believe even earlier, was a morning sickness medication for pregnant women, thalidomide. And what happened was they found that the actual substance of interest was like really helpful, and it helped with morning sickness, and it was a good med for women to take. But so they started creating it in the lab. But what they resulted in was a mirror image opposite. It's called an enantiomer, which is if you took the molecule and put it in the mirror, it would look like that. And that molecule was lethal and caused severe birth defects. So there's a lot of people that were born in the 70s and in the 60s that have birth defects because of this. So what they had to do is they had to go back to the cellular level and say, okay, our intention is to help the women that are pregnant with morning sickness. So we need to filter out the enantiomer mirror image molecules. And so they did this and had added a whole nother filtration process to the scientific sort of model. And they filtered all that out. And then they had their molecule of interest. So it took an intention to focus on what was productive and get rid of the lethal or the venomous other side of this molecule, which was, again, it's a mirror image. It looked exactly like it if you held up to the mirror. So it was easy to miss. So that was a huge breakthrough in science and in organic chemistry. And so that is very similar to what Lynn, what you just said. It's like you had these intentions that were wonderful, but on this other side, there was this other stuff holding it back. And once you sorted out what that was, you were able to filter that out and stay focused on your real intent. So that's a little nerdy science explanation.
That's amazing.
But I think it's very
I
similar.
love the nerdy science.
Yeah, it goes
I
down to
love the
cellular
nerdy
level,
science stuff. At the cellular level. And that is the part that I wanted you to expand your thoughts a little bit more on. Maybe talk a little bit more about this conscious and the subconscious aspect of our decision making. Lynn alluded to our belief system and what we actually truly manifest in our lives. Dive in a little bit more in this area.
Well, I think, to explain the positive sides of this, we have to look at sort of like the struggle sides of this. So we mentioned earlier, obsessive compulsive issues there's a lot of people, they've proven that people that have a mild sort of OCD are extremely successful and do very well in life. But there's a range of this condition, and people that have it very severely, it limits and hinders and holds them back. And so what this is, and there's all these different strategies to deal with OCD that I've worked with my patients. But what happens is, let's say I have a fear of dirty or I'm a cleanliness freak, let's say. Well, and I'm afraid of germs. Well, that's an obsession. So my compulsion that I do, my behavior that I do is I wash everything a million times because I'm like afraid of germs. And because of that, it prevents me from doing anything else in my day. So all I'm doing is worried about dirt and germs. And now I'm just like, I'm cleaning constantly and I get nothing done. So that is an anxiety issue that's related to lack of control. So if I feel that I have no control in my life whatsoever, that can lead to an obsessive compulsive sort of situation. And there's desensitization techniques. There's even meds, which I'm not a huge fan of, but they can help people that have severe issues. And there's therapeutic ways to deal with this. But if we look at like what's going on neurochemically, there is brain scan data. There's a lot of different emotional and scientific sort of neurochemical issues that are related to someone that's kind of lost track of the real goal to be productive in life, and they're stuck on these things that are hindering them because it's fear-based, it's anxiety-based. And if I feel that I don't have any control over my life, then I'm going to try to get control by cleaning, the door handle all day long. Then I have control over that, and that gives me a sense of peace, even if it's fleeting. So for people that are on these routines that are obsessive, well, if they're leading to success and it's a mild way, it can be okay. But you always got to look at it and see, like, okay, it's one step away from becoming something problematic that prevents me from being fluid in the moment and making adjustments. And we all know in the corporate world, you have to be fluid. You have to be able to make adjustments. I don't know any career that's high, high stress or high productivity that is like a robotic thing that you have to be. I've never seen that before. So everything that I know in the corporate world is dynamic, and it's always changing. It's always fluid. And so someone that's like locked into a rigid way of thinking gets passed by, and they just become old news, just like an old computer doesn't work anymore. So you have to be able to adjust. So, that's what I work with the people that I am. I have somebody who has an OCD. I work with them on getting control over things that are appropriate for them.
But if they're biologically, their makeup is in a certain way, then is chemicals in their brains they're more propense to behave or think a certain way. How do you manage with something like that?
Unfortunately, meds.
Yeah.
Meds help that a lot. And there's a few that are okay, actually. Now, the problem with OCD meds is they have a lot of side effects. There's a lot of things that are undesirable about OCD meds. But, you know, epigenetics is a really good concept that's coming to light more and more and more, where you can shift with mindfulness techniques, meditation, and certain homeopathic remedies. You can shift your whole DNA sequencing. So I like the alternative route if possible. Sometimes there's not environments for that, and it's hard to access those types of things, and it can take a while. So again, it's a personal decision to become medicated again, which I'm not a fan of, but I've seen it work for people that are very severe. So I think if you have a neurochemical issue that's OCD related, it's about a multi-pronged approach of behavioral interventions, cognitive behavioral therapeutic techniques, systematic desensitization, and then meds if needed, and then epigenetic sort of homeopathic remedies. You have to approach it like in multiple ways to see what resonates with the person.
I think what I really appreciate about this, though, is that, Dr. Jeff, you bring like a perspective that's, I think, so much so that like after the scientific revolution or whatnot, it's like what we know, science. So like chemicals, like matter over mind. But I think what your perspective is helping me kind of like in another way, like, so when Veronica is asking, so how do you control this? How do you shift this? It's not just the matter over the mind, but it's also the mind over the matter.
Yes.
And maybe even more things, right? That we can't necessarily put some like words or science to, but it's so powerful. Like the mind is so powerful,
Yes.
even to the cellular level, that there is like a direct connection, and that really excites me. And I really appreciate that you bring that kind of perspective on, that we're holistic beings, that we shouldn't be stuck in just the physiological or just the chemical, but that there's multiple ways that we can walk towards wellness.
Definitely. Like the most I think interesting people that I've met in my career have been people that have looked at both sides and find validity in both sides and use each side to complement the other. Because in the world these days, there's all this whole divide and conquer thing going on, and pitting people against each other, and what group are you in and what do you believe, and that just hinders and limits and restricts and controls people. So I love the fact that I have a science background from UCLA, but I also have a spiritual sort of holistic background from Rhythmia and all the 9,000 plus people I've worked with in an environment where things are very different than UCLA. It's nice to see both worlds.
So, Dr. Jeff, then I would love for us to create a space for the last 2-3 minutes that we have for you to share a little bit more on this spiritual background and the wonderful things you do at Rhythmia to help with this particular issue.
Well, what I believe, again, to make a perfect little blend of the two, of science and spirituality, I think that vibrational frequencies are things that are very important for us to understand and to maneuver within. I've learned that when things are at a high vibrational frequency, meaning, let's say, broccoli versus crack cocaine. Okay, so broccoli is a high vibrational, therapeutic, healing, very green substance that if we eat it, it helps us feel good, and it raises our own vibrational frequency to be healthy and feel good and think more clearly and all these things. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if I decide to smoke crack cocaine, I'm going to feel very low vibrational frequency within myself. I'm going to be thinking of negative thoughts. I'm going to be obsessing over ridiculous nonsense, and I'm going to be very unhealthy. It's going to hurt my heart and my lungs, and it's going to be a bad thing. So raising our vibrational frequency is also raising our spirituality. It's also raising our self-awareness. It's also bringing our bodies and our minds and our mind-body-spirit connection together. It's helping us access information and things that are in a higher plane. And what happens at Rhythmia is every single modality we're using is doing this. It's helping people raise their vibrational frequency by super healthy food and hydrocolonic cleanses and plant medicine and meditation and yoga and positive talks and group things and all this cool stuff. And then we're in a blue zone, which is a healthy area of the world to live. And so there's all these things that help the person feel really healthy, and they get good sleep, and there's all these great things. And so in that space, there's connections that we make, and there's awarenesses, and I like to say aha moments, and things that are very simple but very powerful and very clear, and you can access higher levels of consciousness. And there's lots of ways to do this that are not just at Rhythmia, clearly, but that we can do this anywhere in the world. And it's about sitting with yourself and rising up in a way that you kind of get out of the lower kind of sludge of the dark sort of down, the downside of opposite equal polar opposite side of just, I guess, life. That's what I've learned, and how to try to do that as much as often as I can to help get clarity with myself, my family, and with the patients I work with. It's what helps me.
Wow, I love this phrase, sitting with yourself and rise up.
Along that, I think this is why we go back to focus. What we focus on expands what we take in, and high vibrational thoughts and high vibrational beliefs create that reality for us. And I think it's so cool that there's like a science behind all this.
Yeah, it's finally catching up to what all the shamans, yogis, and gurus have known for generations.
Yeah,
that is right. The science and the spirituality. Thank you, Dr. Jeff. What a beautiful discussion. I feel like there's so much here to digest, and I want to go back and listen to what you just shared today. Super powerful. Thank you so much again, and thank you everyone who's watching. Thank you for always joining 30 Minutes of Wisdom once a month, the first Saturday of the month, right? Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Jeff, Mental Health in Corporate America. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.